Good morning. I'm about to show, as you can see, I've got all the glamour of an expected artist. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm measuring up and marking out where I'm going to put the cords for hanging. And as you can see, as ever, everything goes to plan. So here we are. Right, where you put your attachments for hanging a canvas depends largely A, on personal taste, and B, on the size of your canvas. Now, there was a time that when we prepared a canvas, we would actually use wire on the back of it. There are still a few diehards that actually stick with that. So you'd put your fixtures on and then your hanging cord on the back would have been wire. However, not too many years ago, because human beings have reverted to being idiots, I think, it became apparent that a lot of galleries and hanging exhibitions wouldn't take canvases with wire on the back for health and safety. Yes, I do mean that, believe it or not, because it was considered dangerous that wire was used on the back of the picture and somebody might prick their finger. I won't tell you what I think of that phrase, but there you go. So in general nowadays, most people are using nylon cord. If you're that way inclined, I guess it could have other uses too. But going back to your measurements, roughly, knowing that you're using a nylon cord and with the best will in the world, and no matter how good the quality is, there's a certain amount of give. Canvases aren't generally that heavy. However, if you've got it hanging for some time, then there'll be some give in the cord. So you don't ever want to put your attachments too high up on the canvas, because if the cord stretches, potentially it will show above your canvas. But again, it's a matter of personal taste. These are 24 by 12 canvases. We're going to be working on them on a landscape, so it means that way, not that way, that way. So I usually, and I have done with all these, I usually measure out 5 inches from the top, which is where I'm going to put my fitments, and that's where the cord will attach. That way, when you hang it, it will have a slight lean back to the top, so it'll have a slight lean against the wall at the top. If the string stretches, then you're not going to see it above the canvas at any point in time. And for me, it just works well. Obviously, that measurement varies depending on the size of a canvas. For instance, if I'm using 16 by 20s, then the measurement from the top, whether I'm going to be doing a landscape or a portrait, then I usually work it roughly on a 5, 6 or a 7 inch, depending on the canvas, the weight of the canvas. Different canvases have different basic weights, what I'm painting and how I think it's actually going to hang better and what the measurement is. But realistically, just keep it far enough away from the top so that when you hang it, it falls below the frame, so you can see the frame here. So if I put my attachments here and here, right next to the top edge of that frame, those attachments are going to press into the wall, and it's actually going to make it difficult to get it to sit flat. So I go for here, then when it's hanging, it's got a very small tilt and it doesn't show. You can't see anything from the front, and that's the whole point. So there you go. I tend to use, not always, but I do tend to use what they call a D attachment. Now there's two sides to a D attachment. I don't know if you can see it. One side has got a ridge on it and the other side is perfectly flat. There's arguments for both ways. If you're likely to be hanging this on the wall, some people prefer it to be flat so that the ridge is on the inside, so it's not pressing out. However, I tend to work the other way around. Two reasons for that. Again, it helps to make sure that the canvas isn't too flat against the wall, because if you're looking at it 100% flat, it changes your visual perspective. But the other reason for me, more importantly, is that when I'm stacking canvases, and a lot of artists will have more than one canvas, but when I'm stacking canvases, if I have the ridge on the outside, it means that when I stack the next canvas on top, like that, it will leave a slight amount of air to actually circulate between the canvases, and it means they're not pressing against each other. And while we're on the subject of stacking canvases, I think it's important to say, when you stack canvases, you stack them face to face or back to back. You never stack a canvas face on to the frame at the back, because it will put imprints into the canvas, it'll damage it. You can't always get those marks out. Sometimes you can. So if you've got a light mark in the canvas because something's pressed up against it, when I'm stacking canvases, the other thing is I rip off and remove all the spacers. I've never actually used them in recent times. A couple of the older canvas boards, you might need them, but I don't keep them on there. I've got a drawer full. If I need one, I can find one. But if you leave them on the back of the canvases when you're stacking them, they will also put pressure on the face of the canvas. But if it should happen that you've got some indents in your canvas because it's been pressed against something, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can improve that by literally spraying the back side, not the front, especially if you've painted on it, but spraying very lightly with a misting spray, slightly warmed water onto the back of the canvas, and then let it dry naturally. So stack it somewhere where it will dry naturally. Sometimes that will actually remove the imprints from the back of the canvas, because you have to remember that canvases, especially when they're strung like this, are actually made of fabric, so they do have give. So over a period of time, you may find if you've stacked them badly, or if there's been anything pressing against it, that it'll damage the surface of your canvas. Okay, so don't put your attachments too high. If you're stacking canvases, you stack them face to face and back to back. Never face to back, because it will damage them. And if you find that your canvas has gone a little bit loose, or more likely you've got an imprint in it, then lightly spray the back of it with misty water, slightly warm I usually use, and then just leave it to re-dry naturally and have a look. If you're lucky, you will find that the indent has removed itself, and you can carry on and use your canvas, or hang your picture back up if it's been hanging around waiting for its turn on the wall. Okay, that's it.